What's the most messed up thing you saw at a sleepover? Had a giant sleepover when I was like 8 or 9. I want to say it was a friend's birthday, and he had all of his friends over and his parents had also invited some friends over as well. As the night winded down, we all went into my buddy's room to jam some Super Smash Bros. Melee on his GameCube. Fast forward to about 2 a.m. in the morning and most of the boys had fallen asleep, save for a few of us. I had to go to the restroom horribly. Now I was holding everything in as I was terrified of using other people's restrooms in fear of making a mess or smelling up their bathrooms. So I asked my friend where the bathroom was. I still don't know if I misheard him or was just stupid and forgot the minute I walked out of the room, but I somehow ended up at his parents' door and opened it full force and found myself staring at his mother being banged by this dude that was at the party while his dad was sitting in the chair in the corner getting a BJ from the other dude's wife. I opened the door so quickly that they didn't even have time to semi-hide what they were doing. So there I was, 9 years old, frozen in place, staring at his mother being plowed by this man while his dad was receiving head from the other man's wife. I still see their faces to this day. The only reason I know that they were swinging was because I could see every single one of their faces. They all just looked at me trying to process what just happened. After a good 5 seconds of dead silence, finally, the father yelled to get out and I just shut the door. I stood there for what seemed like hours and then finally made my way back to the room, completely forgetting about having to take a crap and just laid down. I laid there all night, wide awake, until 7 when my mom picked me up the next day. I never told anyone and never went to another sleepover at my friend's house or even went inside of his house, again, in fear of having to see his parents and having that talk with them. Got to the house, they had like a tiny string fence blocking the path to any carpeted area in the house. No one was ever allowed in these areas apparently, except when he or his sister would have to vacuum, which was every single night. Then when we were in the basement, his mother yelled for him to come up. He had left a single plate in the kitchen sink, which is apparently a big no-no. She was screaming at him as we could hear her hitting him and then him apologizing profusely, but she was relentless. He came down in tears. I wanted to punch his mother in the face. To add to this, he had a birthday, and we were invited to do laser tag, and all was good. We played, and afterwards we were in his dad's vehicle, and the dad asked us, well, what's next, guys? And I suggested that we go down to the local mall, just as a suggestion. Okay, so he drives us there, and everyone gets out except, wait, my friend isn't allowed to go to the mall. At this point, I am beyond confused because it was his birthday. Why did his dad even bring us there? Why didn't he suggest something else or tell us to think of something else? Like, what? They just drive away and the rest of us are left wondering what a psychotic family this is. But after that, his dad hated me. I was a bad influence apparently, all because I made a suggestion. How the heck was I supposed to know his 16-year-old son is forbidden to go to the mall? I could go on and on about how crazy these people are. When I was 12, we went on a family trip to Vegas. I woke up in the hotel to my parents having fun in the bed next to me. I was trapped and had nowhere to go, and my mom said something along the lines of, "Stop, we're gonna wake up the kids." My dad gets up, walks over to our bed, and rips the blankets off our faces and said, "See? Fast asleep. I should have won an Oscar." Well, not so much a sleepover, but after a sleepover. My 8-year-old daughter and her friend made a recipe which will live in infamy while my wife and I slept. I woke up the next morning, went to the kitchen to make some coffee. The first thing I notice is the strong smell of maple syrup. Next, I see something that looks like cake batter that's not quite mixed all over the counter and the sink. I turned around and see it all over the refrigerator handles and door. Some of it was on the tile floor with footprints in it, and this was just the beginning. Next, I walked into the family room, following the footprints in the dark blue carpet. And in the middle of the floor is a couple of blankets in a pile. The maple syrup smell is now overpowering. I picked up the blankets to find a mixing bowl that had been dumped on the carpet. It looked like they tried to clean up the mess with the blankets and then just decided to leave it there. In the mix were pieces of eggshells and eggs that once again were not quite mixed in. This stuff had become like part of the carpet that it crept into, and I could not imagine anything being harder to get out of the carpet. I literally spent hours with the Hoover carpet scrubber trying to get it clean. I put the kids to work cleaning up the kitchen, and that was the last sleepover for quite a long time. It's nothing that I saw, but more like something that had happened to me. I was 13 when I stayed over at my friend's house for the night. We were up pretty late playing video games and eating snacks, and I got thirsty, so my friend and I went to the fridge to get a bottle of Coke. When I opened the bottle, the soda shot straight up my face and got all over my white shirt. I asked my friend if I could shower since I was pretty sticky from the soda. Once I got out of the shower, I noticed my friend and his little brother were knocked out in the living room sofas, and by the way, I had no shirt on since the soda ruined me completely. That's when their aunt came through the door and saw me. She got close to me and started to rub her hands around my chest and shoulders. I was completely shocked and stayed still, and then my friend's brother woke up and saw what was going on. She stopped touching me right away and says, "Oh, I thought you were my nephew," and then went straight to her room and never came out until I left the next morning. Even if I were her nephew, why the heck would she touch me like that? And to this day, I wonder what would have happened if my friend's little brother hadn't woken up. It wasn't the night, but it was the morning after. I was at a friend's house in the big city when I was maybe 8 or 9. I had gone to the bathroom for number 1 and gone out. Nothing strange. And then my friend goes in after me and comes back out. About 10 minutes later, his mom goes mental and screams at me. At first, I don't understand what it's about, but then she points me to the bathroom where there's a huge puddle of pee on the floor. She made me clean up her son's pee because he told her that I had done it. Needless to say, I didn't really speak to my friend after that. Was an awkward breakfast. This isn't really that messed up, but hilarious. A group of us guys were over at a friend's for his birthday, somewhere around 8 to 10-year-olds. Now we were playing Monopoly. The game had already been going on for a while and had gotten a little heated. The house rule was if you don't realize that someone is on your property before the next roll, the rent is forfeited. So I roll my dice and land on a property where S had owned the Monopoly. I quickly gave my dice to the next player G, and he rolled. G moves on before S realized what happened, and S blew up. He started yelling and screaming about how I cheated him out of his rent. S ends up taking all of his money and walks away from the board. G starts egging him on, saying things like, "You gonna buy some fake toys with that fake money?" And this pisses off S even more. It escalates into a real wrestling fight, with 5 or 6 young boys all screaming and wrestling about fake money. Now, this all happened somewhere around midnight after an evening of junk food and movie watching. We were in the basement of the house, and the parents' bedroom was immediately at the top of the stairs. The door in the stairs blows open with the dad, and he has his belt in his hands and booms, "If you all don't stop now, I will whip all of you." And that silences us all. We settle down and realize we should probably be sleeping, and we all climb into our sleeping bags to try to sleep. S takes his over to the corner with his money, and G whispers, "You still gonna buy those fake toys?" And we all snicker. To this day, S is still pissed off about that game, and that was nearly 40 years ago. My best friend was sleeping over when we were about 11 or 12, and we were hanging out in my room, me on my bed, and her on a mattress between my bed and the window. Out of absolutely nowhere, we hear a bang, and my wall-length window totally shatters. Glass flies clean across the room, and we are both covered. We both start losing our minds and run out of the room, both of us covered in blood and cutting our feet up as we run. My dad flies into action mode and locks us in the pantry, grabs a kitchen knife, and runs into the backyard to look for anyone who might have been behind the window smashing. There was no one, so he called the police and tended to our injuries. When the police arrive, they search my room for a cause and discover a huge, solid ball bearing, presumably from a truck. It had landed less than 20 centimeters from where my friend's foot had been. If it had hit one of us, it could have seriously hurt us. There are no roads or anything near us, and my room faced into the back fence. So to this day, we still have no clue where it came from or how it was traveling at such a speed it cleared multiple fences and smashed a window. My mom had been getting us Happy Meals while this whole ordeal went on, so she was more than a little shocked when she arrived home. We had put up a tent in my buddy's backyard. There was a catwalk that his backyard had a gate to that went between the houses and eventually came to a school field. It was late, and we were chilling in the tent laughing and eating snacks when we heard voices coming down the path. There were shrubs along the fence line except for the gate area, so they couldn't see us. But we snuck out and hid in the bushes and were going to scare them when they walked past. But the closer they got, the older they sounded, and one guy sounded really angry. So we decided to stay super quiet, let them pass, and go back to the tent. When they got just past the house, the dude was pressuring this girl to give him a BJ right then and there. She didn't want to, but gave in after asking a couple times. So we had to sit there for like 10 minutes until he finished, and then were terrified that if we made a sound, he would see us and kill us. We were probably around 12 years old. Scary stuff. When I was about 14, some friends and I had a campout in one of our backyards. This was in a regular older neighborhood in the city, but certainly not rich. but not the ghetto either. Just a working-class neighborhood. Anyway, I have no idea what time it was, but I woke up and there was this guy standing amongst us as we lay there on the ground in our sleeping bags. He was just looking at us. I froze, but I was ready to scream my lungs out as I watched him through the slits of my eyes. After what seemed like a year, he stepped out from between us all, went over and hopped the chain-link fence and walked down the alley. I immediately woke everyone and we went inside to tell my friend's mom. And obviously, we finished our sleepover inside. This was also the last outside sleepover ever. I remember we did a secondary school bonding thing in our first year, where you effectively go to a summer camp for the weekend with the whole year group, and it's about 200 11 to 12-year-olds, to get to know everyone. Sleeping arrangements were in dormitories with bunk beds separated by gender, about 30 to a room. Lights go out in my dorm, no teachers, just 30 11 and 12-year-olds that didn't really know each other that well. A kid farts. Hilarious. Someone else farts, a few others, and then I vividly remember a distinct, sloppy sound followed by a panic, "Oh," a kid crapped himself. I would also like to note, this is not the only public pants pooping by this kid. He did it again in the final year during our Duke of Edinburgh Award expedition overnight whilst camping. I was sharing a tent with him, and that's a whole different story. I'm so sorry you'll have to suffer the mental image of this, but it was a classic high school sleepover. We ate tons of junk food and drank a good amount of smuggled beers, after which friend number 1 suggests we sneak into the community pool to go skinny dipping. We were all pretty reckless, so it came as a surprise when friend number 2 really opposed the idea. He absolutely would not budge for the longest time. Of course, we eventually bullied him into compliance, as high school kids do, climbed the fence, dropped our drawers, and went for a dip. Unfortunately for us, it must have been a full moon that night because despite the lateness of the evening, there was still enough light for us all to see, to our horror, the aptly named friend number 2 begin releasing stream after stream of projectile diarrhea just moments after we all got into the pool. And yes, it looked exactly like what you're undoubtedly picturing in your mind right now. We also completely neglected to bring towels, so we ended the night with a long, wet, cold, and completely silent walk back to friend number 1's house. The next morning, friend number 2 pretended to have blacked out from his 2 beers and claimed he had no memory of the event. We are still friends to this day, and hilariously enough, he is now my gastroenterologist. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night, and then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement and was clearly very upset, but didn't explain why. She then had each of us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. So finally I was up and her mom took me into the bathroom and showed me a trash can with poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears, pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was, or at least I wasn't told. We have joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed, but my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls, so we may never know. I had a friend whose dad had a piranha fish tank. I really wanted to feed them a hot dog, but her dad told me that they already ate. During the night, I snuck down to where the fish tank was and picked clean fish bones in the tank. The dad was down there watching football and he spotted me and asked if I still wanted to feed the piranha. Being a small piranha-obsessed child, I nodded and produced the hot dog I saved from the barbecue dinner we had. It was the most terrifying and awesome thing I have ever seen. 10 out of 10 would never want to watch 3 piranha go at a hot dog ever again. At least not in person.